way back when we started this podcast, I was explaining to my mom what the podcast is, and she was just like, "What if you can't beat the game?" And I was like, "Ma, do you know who I am?
Ma,
You freaking kidding me?" But games are hard.
Welcome to White Flag.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
Hello and welcome to Wide Flank. This is a game club episode. If you don't know what that means, a poll goes out in our Discord once per month to vote on the next game. We do one of these per month, amongst other shows. We also do a GLHF episode for our Patreon subscribers, which is the first impressions of the game club game. Check that out at patreon.com/wideflank. Hop on our Discord, vote for games, talk about games, play games. You know, whatever. There's other channels. Talk about it.
yeah. There's a fitness channel.
Yeah, what other stuff are people talking about? Talking about making games,
Making games.
plants. Post yourself streaming. When you stream, post the link and
Everything you could possibly want to do on a Discord, you could do it at the Wide Flank Discord. The Wide Flank Discord.
rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your lovers, tell your haters. Get in there. Thanks for listening. Let's get into it. Resident Evil, Sean, what's up, dog?
What's up, Alon? Resident Evil, the game that dared to ask.
God.
I think you know what I'm going to say, Alon. I think you know where this is going.
I'm not going to say it.
The game that dared to ask, what if a residence was evil? So Resident Evil, indeed, the game begins on a haunted mansion. Okay. Resident Evil, which was originally called Biohazard in Japan, and as is often the case on Wide Flank, I'm resisting the urge to dive down a rabbit hole of information and lore about the title of the game, which is that, I'll just say it, that Shinji Mikami prefers the title of Biohazard and thinks Resident Evil is silly.
It's a cooler name. I mean, that's why there's a punk band called Biohazard and other copyrighted stuff that they couldn't use it because Biohazard's sick.
Wait, what's the copyrighted thing? Like
There was like some
Capcom?
other game called Biohazard that was like smaller game then, and there was like a punk band in New York City called Biohazard, and so Capcom was like, "Sorry, we can't release it here called Biohazard," and they did a company-wide competition to come up with Resident Evil.
Yeah. Do you have a list of like any other options that were in the poll?
I don't, but I know that they ultimately didn't really like Resident Evil and thought it was really cheesy, but they're like, all right, yeah, it wins. At least it like tells people what it is. So.
Yeah, it's a residence that's evil.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was released in 1996. It was developed by a team led by Shinji Mikami. And I want to clarify, this is the version of the game that we're playing. We're playing the 1996 PlayStation release.
Right.
There's a director's cut. There's a 2002 remake for the Nintendo GameCube. There's all these different iterations of the original Resident Evil, but we're sticking to the baseline classic rendering structure of the game.
Yep.
So players take control of either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, who are members of the Elite Task Force STARS, who must escape a mansion infested with zombies and other creepy crawlies. We're talking not lizards, but we are talking spiders, snakes. What else?
Shark.
There's a shark that. Did you get messed up by the shark? How'd you deal with the shark?
Absolutely shredded by the shark. It's basically like you turn left and you insta die, or you turn right and you figure out a way to neutralize it. That's the two options.
it's a game of choices, I would say, ultimately.
Yes,
Left,
yes.
killed by shark. Right, not killed by shark.
Yes.
It was conceived by producer Tokuro Fujiwara as a remake of his 1989 NES or Famicom game Sweet Home. Sweet Home, neither Alon nor I played Sweet Home for the preparation of this.
No.
But we watched some footage of it. Can you tell
I
us
checked
about
it out.
Yeah, tell us about the footage, Alon.
It's very top-down Resident Evil. I mean, it's pretty much the same mechanics of like you can imagine like Link to the Past. I think a lot of people have played that in a house, like just one huge house.
I was going to compare it to like Dragon Quest or
Yes.
Final Fantasy. Like
Yeah,
it is
totally.
like you're drawing from a list. You go into random battles, kind of.
Yeah, and the
like
fights are like that Final Fantasy or Pokemon way of fighting. It's like, here's enemy, now we're in a battle sequence. Do you want to fight, run, use item, or blah blah blah? And there's like, different characters in your party and stuff. But a lot of the core Resident Evil things, like the door sequences and keys and locks and that kind of stuff, seems to have carried over pretty well to this 3D game, this 3D horror game, which was kind of like blending. And based on research, it just seems like it's took a lot from different games, Sweet Home, Alone in the Dark, some other games, and just blended it all together to like this is like our complete version of all of these games put together.
Of this thing that we're going for. And I think another thing that they're going for is like a realistic portrayal of a situation, because like the limit Sweet Home is an NES game, so it's like the graphics are somewhat limited in a way, like because it's an older game. And at the start of production of Resident Evil, there was a pretty explicit desire on the part of Fujiwara to like re-render Sweet Home in higher fidelity. Like that was the thing. And even early on in the development of Resident Evil, there was like a push and pull, if you will, between like the desire of the vision of the reality they wanted to render and the graphic capabilities of the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Because when the game, I'm going to pull a quote here, when the game was first being like conceived of, this is a quote from Shinji Mikami in 1996. In the beginning of the game's creation, we considered using a Doom-like 3D environment, but we reconsidered. In a 3D environment, you wouldn't be able to see the main character, so you would lose that sense of identity. It's also hard to build the kind of fear that we were going for. We decided it would be more frightening to have the camera suddenly jump to a different view to heighten the suspense. So what Shinji is not saying in that quote is that like literally the PlayStation could not render like polygons in the way that they wanted.
I think also what he's not saying in that quote is we played Alone in the Dark and we wanted our game to look like that because they did a really clever, good job with the set pieces.
Yeah, I don't have the quote handy, but there is like, you can find Mikami being like, then we played Alone in the Dark and the pre-rendered backgrounds worked pretty well in that.
Yes. I watched a good like 30 minutes of that game on YouTube or something, not playing myself, just watching someone else play it. Yeah, I mean, the way that the set pieces are, the way that there's a dog beast jumping through a window, the way that like you move through a space, the different cameras on the wall are basically like, watching you move. I don't know if I'm describing it well, but that sort of like CCTV style camera that is in Resident Evil is identical in Alone in the Dark.
And so there's two ways we can take that. There's one way we can take it of like Resident Evil took everything from Alone in the Dark. And it's like, no, like the energy of Alone in the Dark, from my understanding of it, is like kind of different. Like it has whatever. I'm not going to go down that pathway. The pathway I actually want to go down is the fact that Resident Evil then already this early in the conversation, we're hitting upon the reality that it's like, it is a very iterative game. It feels like this like watershed moment, the creation of the survival horror genre and and it's like, we don't need to chime in with Alone in the Dark created survival, because it's like, it's these games exist on a spectrum with one another.
Yeah.
And I think Resident Evil exists in direct relationship to both Sweet Home and Alone in the Dark. Like, it is this combination of ideas that then like trickled out into its own ideas. Like, and without getting...
I don't think you need to say like, oh, they copied them, or this is better than that, or this was first. I think that the way that I'm looking at it, and probably the way they were looking at it too, I don't think they went in with the intention of copying anything. It was just Alone in the Dark came up with a very clever way to solve the same problem that we have currently in production. And they're like, oh, this is a great solution to our problem. Not like that's a great game and let's make an identical clone of that game, because that's not what it is.
No.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to note that like this sort of camera arrangement, it's popularized. It's maybe created by Alone in the Dark, popularized by Resident Evil, but like a few years after Resident Evil, the mind like seizes upon Grim Fandango. Are you familiar with this game?
Heard of it, never played.
It's a game. It's a more explicit adventure game, which is a hint of something we might talk about later in the conversation as well. But it's a game that again uses pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D character models within it. And I don't know if many people are like, coming for Grim Fandango for like stealing from Resident Evil.
Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, it's there. Whatever. We're not here to litigate this exact conversation. We got a lot of stuff to get to. So did we hit all the basic upfront information?
I think so. I think we're cooking. Yeah.
Yeah. So the game, let's start with a personal question then, Alon. Like, before playing the game for this game club, what was your knowledge and experience of Resident Evil?
Yeah, so basically I think all I knew was zombies. And
good
what
start.
Zombies mean in like contemporary gaming, I feel like is like Call of Duty waves of zombies that you mow down with your like sick machine guns, and you're just killing like thousands of zombies. And I mentioned on the GLHF Patreon episode that like I didn't even know what tank controls meant before I started playing this. I thought literally I was going to get into a tank and like kill some armies of zombies or something. I didn't know what to expect at all. I mean, I'm pretty bad at remembering like old episodes and what we talked about and stuff, but I do remember that my expectations in going to Metal Gear Solid were sort of similar, which is funny because they're sort of same era PlayStation games.
Sure, yeah.
But going into Metal Gear Solid, I was like, oh, it's going to be like so sick. It's going to be stealth, Tom Clancy, like cool headshots and like choking people out. And like, it's not. It's like really goofy and like aiming and shooting is like not really an option and like yada yada. But
yeah, it's a far more defensive sort of game. Like, it's not a power fantasy. Really.
No, it's not. And this game, I think, is very similar to that because I thought I was going into, oh my God, I'm going to be killing, I'm fragging out. I'm going to this house, I'm going to kill every zombie. And that's how I started the early part of the game. I was just killing everything.
Did you want to kill? Like, okay, so this is beautiful. Were you like, I'm going to kill, that's what I'm going to do in this game? Or was it like sort of...
That was my expectation, and that's how I treated the early part of the game. Was like, there's a bad guy, time for me to use my gun and kill them.
Okay.
And also, like, I should note that I played Jill and Sean played Chris.
Yes.
And Jill has a lot more ammo and stuff like that. And I didn't know this till after, doing research. So for me, it was a lot easier. I was like, oh, I have 37 pistol bullets. I'll just kill a zombie because I don't know that like my resources are going to be really limited and like my inventory slots are really limited. And I shouldn't just pick everything up and kill everything. And
so you slammed up against the reality of the game's like scarcity design pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah, and I think it was Nolan who mentioned early, like right when we chose this game, like I'm excited to find out if they have the disposition, I think, for these kind of games or something, or retro games, and like
sure.
I feel like running into this problem that I was having early of like, oh my God, I wish I didn't pick that up. And like, I don't have enough inventory. You know, I think that's almost what he was maybe referencing.
Well, it's like how, like that sort of is like a turning point for a gamer, for a player. Like,
yeah.
Are you like then stoked about the inventory management? Or are you just like, what the fuck? Like, oh, I want to, but it's like, that's kind of like, that's at the core of the game's design, right? Like, it's not just, it's an old game. There should be more inventory. It is like they could have given you endless inventory. Like, that's not a technical concern.
Yeah.
It's more of like a design choice ultimately to limit the player's inventory.
And I'm very happy you said it that way, because I think that going back in time and reading some of the reviews of this game, which, you know, some are old from 96, 97, and then a lot of people are playing, you know, remakes or going back to play the original Resident Evil on YouTube videos.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just like the amount of times I had to like clarify, like, no, 1996, Chris, like the levels of specificity that you have to like layer in, the number of things that you had to clarify about which version of the game you're playing.
Yeah, but I was saying that because a lot of the reviews, I mean, when I say a lot, I mean pretty much all that I saw and read were kind of just like, this is bad. This is a mistake. Like talking about the inventory and stuff. Like, this is bad. They should have had a backpack. Or this is bad. They fixed it in Resident Evil 4. This is a mistake. This is stupid. And I was just like, can we? Like, how is anyone reading any video game journalism? Like, can we stop saying like, this is better than that? These graphics are better than these. This game's obsolete. Retire it. Take it out back. Shoot it. Turn it into glue. Like, that's the
delist it.
That's the POV of 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 reviews that I was seeing, and I was just like, I hated it all because I was like, wait, I am down with this. I'm playing. Like, I don't know why specifically, but my reaction was more like what you were saying before. Mine was, I'm going to play with these rules. Like, I ran into it. You know, I got a shotgun and I'm like, oh my God, I'm playing Doom. I'm going to kill every zombie. And then I'm out of shells and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm playing a different game now.
This ain't Doom, baby.
This ain't Doom, baby. And I ran into it and I didn't bounce off it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, this is different. This is new for me.
So you hit that like moment and then you were able to like orient yourself around it. And I think there's a million different things that I want to riff on.
Well, let me just squeeze this in really quick because I have in my notes, like, I basically have like tired and wired, and the tired is my note in literally all caps. Will I take the bazooka? Million question marks. Hello. And then literally like 5 minutes later, when I didn't have enough inventory space to like get the sun crest or something, I literally wrote in my notes, will I take anything? The answer is no, I will not take it. Like, I just started not picking up anything.
So on the Chris playthrough, you never encountered small keys, right? Doesn't Jill get like a lockpick?
She has a lockpick, but it only works on like desk drawers and stuff like that. Like, you still need mansion keys.
You still, so that's the distinction in the Chris design. It's like, instead of the lockpick, you get these small keys which open desk drawers, which have ammo in them. And so the number of times where I encounter, and look, we like, I think we're in alignment.
That's tough.
Yeah, exactly. It's. Before we go hater mode on this game, this is another classic wide flank. Like, we love this game, but it's easy to go hater mode on it. The number of point is, we like how scarce the game is. Like, I'm speaking for myself and saying, like, I like the brain play of like, fuck, I shouldn't have picked that up. Or like, oh, okay, I need to think more about the choices I'm making in this limited space. That being said, the number of times that like I couldn't pick up a key item because like I had thoughtlessly just picked up a blue herb. The number of blue herbs that are in this game, how many times did you get poisoned?
I got
in the
poisoned
game?
twice, I think.
Twice. There's like 40 blue herbs in the mansion.
And
Not
you
the point.
can't take them if you're not poisoned.
Yeah.
Like you can't just like eat one to free up a space. It's just like you can't do that. I'm like, can I please just like snort this blue herb? Like I need to pick up this Mo disc, and you just can't.
There isn't even an option to like drop items. Like it's but that's what it is.
That's what the game is, kind of.
Like the game is, hey, do you really need to pick that up right now? And it can be you can throw a little bit of a temper tantrum of like,
yeah.
What do I pick up? Like, am I going to have to go back to the save room? And it's like, yeah, you might have to go back to the save room. You might have to take things a little more seriously next time.
Yeah.
You're in a house full of danger.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Gamer. So, yeah, what were we talking about?
I guess we're talking about the inventory now, and we started with like what were my first impressions, and then this is what I ran into, and I guess we're just going on because I do think it's like the first sort of thing that I ran into that was like, whoa, this is different. I'm not used to this. I wasn't expecting this, and it's sort of perpetual through your entire playthrough. Eventually you get good at it, but like the whole game you're thinking like, do I need that? When am I going to need that? Like, is this worth it with your inventory and your items?
Yeah. So behind the scenes, Alon told me like halfway through each of our playthroughs that like, Alon, you didn't even know about the box in the game.
Tell them what the box is.
In the game called Resident Evil, the game that dared to ask the question, what if a residence was evil? There are save rooms which have a typewriter in it. The typewriter, I don't need to explain the typewriter. There's so many things in this game that are very, very specific. The point is that in those save rooms, often enough, there's also a box that you can store items in, and that's one of like the gamier aspects of the game.
That's the most gamey thing in this game,
right? And because
there's a magical box.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else is sort of you're in reality, and this fucked up thing is happening. Obviously, zombies aren't real, but like, especially in the 90s, you could imagine a biotech hazard where like, shit is fucking up, and that was kind of that was the vibe, and but everything else is real. You have limited inventory. You're fragile because you're human. All these other things, except for this magical box in the save room
box. And this box, the way the box functions is it links to every other box in every other save room in the mansion, such that like when you put items in. And the big joke I had with Alon behind the scenes was that like 40% of the game is in that box. And like that's probably on the higher end of like what percentage of the game it occupies, but it is a significant percentage of the game as designed and as working in your mind. Like, what do I need to bring where? Where am I at? Like, what item did the door just tell me I needed? Oh, do I have that back in my box? Like, it's such a simple thing, but it becomes like kind of this point by which like the game branches out from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have to know where they all are in a way. You know, when you're like, okay, I have a box upstairs where I have like more magnum bullets, but I can't carry it now. And then like you do a thing and then you're like, okay, I'm time to run upstairs, get those, load my mat, whatever. And I think that the thing you're referencing is that I didn't realize that you could drop stuff off in there. So, once again, another wide flank lore thing. Once again, I very much regret not reading the booklet before it starts. It implicitly tells you about item boxes and how it works.
The instruction booklet.
You're supposed to read it, and I didn't read it. This is a recurring theme for Wide Flank,
and I just had the gift of like gamer osmosis of just knowing this game is about scarcity. Never shoot your gun ever.
Yeah. Unless you have to. Yeah.
Unless you have to.
But so in a weird way, I was kind of playing on super hard mode. I was kind of playing a Chris campaign a little bit because I kept soft locking myself, meaning I would pick something up, not be able to drop or take or run out of ammo of any of the things that are in my inventory. And then I would reach some critical game piece, like some mansion key or a crest or something. And I'm just like, oh, I literally can't pick this up. And I would have to shut off the game, start from my last save and be like, okay, I'm not picking up the bazooka. I'm not picking up any of the green herbs. I'm on 1 health, and I just have to get through this part on 1 health before I go heal up at the green herb, like whatever it was, whatever the combination was.
It's like the gears are turning inside the player's mind of like, this is all the information I have. This is where I need to go. And then like it's on the player to execute. Like, as much as like we're talking about this as like a brainy thing, the game is ultimately, it wants to be an action game, right? Like it's a lot of the motivation of the game is I'm moving through this space. I'm dealing with these physical challenges and I'm moving, for the audio listeners, I'm moving my head from side to side because so much of the game, if 40% of it is the box, 30% of it is just like
juking zombies.
Juking zombies. Yeah, exactly.
I actually loved, like,
it feels so good.
I like, again, like back to a little bit of the reviews that I was reading. Tank controls are bad. Like they fix the controls up. I'm down with tank controls. The fixed camera tank control combo, which maybe we need to explain what that means too. But like you're sprinting down a hallway, you're hugging one wall, zombie turns towards you, boom, I break. I'm like Barry Sanders. I go to the other wall, just like later, like.
It gets to a point where if you're choosing to play that way, like once you recognize, oh, I can't just gun down everything, like there's like a little visual tell. Like the zombies will just so tilt their head and you're like, and so it's like, it becomes like, it's these moments of tension and release kind of like, so just, it feels amazing though. Like
it's so fun.
As the game goes on though, it's like not sustainable. Like, oh man, how deep should I get into this? Like,
what, running by enemies?
Like when a player stops running past the enemies.
I did it as much as possible, but the enemies scale with the late game, and they get really scary and hard to dodge, and they kill you in one hit and stuff like that.
Yeah, it gets to a point where. Okay, I'm going to give just like a top level iteration of how I dealt with enemies throughout the game. Top level, I was like, I know about scarcity. I'm a gamer. I know Resident Evil. And so up front, I was just like, I'm just going to play this game by not killing anything ever. Like I'm going to do a pacifist run. Isn't that special? Isn't that interesting? And initially, it was like pretty manageable because it was just like a zombie or two in the hallway. You just juke them, Yeah. Those are very fun.
And they're really
moments.
Slow moving. Like for people who haven't played, they're like barely even threatening the early game zombies. Yeah.
Yeah. They like you'd have to, I mean, they can get you.
They can get you.
I died. Look, if you're not dying in Resident Evil,
you ain't playing.
So early game, I make the choice of like, I'm going to play this as a pacifist. And I forget exactly where the room was, but there's a certain point you hit where like, there's like zombies just everywhere on screen. And it's like, it's really pushing the limits of like, oh yeah, you think you can just juke all of these guys? Like you're going to effing die if you try to juke all these. And this wasn't the turning point I forget what the turning point for me was. I think just at a certain point because early in my play, it's like I started to get scared and to react violently because I was scared. And that always resulted in me dying. If I started shooting because I was scared, like I got like a bloodlust. Like it was like the zombie got downed and I could have just run past it once it was down. But because I had the bloodlust, I was like, I'm going to get, and maybe did I talk about this on the GLH?
I don't think so. No.
I got the bloodlust, and I was shooting it on the ground like, I'm gonna get you, and then it stood up and it killed me.
Oh, you did talk about it, and you
this,
have to restart the game.
I had to restart the entire game, and it was like
so good.
That's what violence gets you.
So
but
good.
At a certain point in the game, you unlock a shotgun, and that somehow just like cleared the way to like my violent future. Because once I had the shotgun and I realized you could just one-shot the zombies and just shoot them in the head, and then you're allowed to navigate the mansion however you want. It was like some of those choices overrode my pacifist desire. And then it was just like one shotgun shell for a lifetime of hallway exploring. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm violent.
I don't want to get too heady here, but I do think that like that sensation that you had like reflects where we are in contemporary gaming. Based on what I've seen in a lot of the later Resident Evils, I've just YouTube videos and people watching them, they are way more action games. It's way more like, I can frag out like I'm fucking the best killing, and I'm just like, wait, that's actually not the core of the franchise. The core is like, yeah, you can kill some zombies with a shotgun, but like you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't have. Like you're gonna wish you had those shells, and like you're vulnerable, and like you're weak, and like they're fast, and you're slow, and like that's the real core. And I just feel like, you know, the constant. It's almost like Doom. Original Doom was like that hit of adrenaline is what people like really got addicted to, and that just like hardcore action power fantasy, like you said.
Yeah.
But this is way more delicate, and like this type of game I could see being a lot less appealing than those. And probably that's why the later games are more, you know, not like this.
So like not even to modern sensibilities, just to like
it's like our like ape brains just want to kill and frag and get adrenaline rushes and dopamine rushes.
To elevate it one brain level high, it's like I think part of what I was realizing is that like it's fear motivated. It is fear motivated to get crazy violent. Like you don't walk in. This game doesn't give you the space to be cocky. Like you just can't. Like I don't want to reference later Resident Evil games too much because
I haven't played them.
I've played the hell out of Resident Evil 4, just like everyone else.
Except me.
Except Alon. God bless you. My experience with Resident Evil 4 did sort of color my experience of this game. Like I had some feeling in the back of my mind, like, is this game gonna become a power fantasy as it goes along? That's what I've heard about like Resident Evil 7, that like by the end of the game, it's basically just a first person shooter.
Yeah, that's what I saw, basically. Based entirely off of YouTube, but that's what it seemed like. And yeah, I mean, that is like, I was trying while I was sort of taking notes to be like, what's a survival horror game? Because that's, you know, what is like, unanimously what Resident Evil is like classed under as a genre. And I do think that like never like powering up in any way, you never like even scratching the surface of power fantasy to me is absolutely core. Like, I'm never leveling up. I'm never getting more armor, more health.
Yeah, never getting more health.
Nothing and remotely like that. I'm getting better guns, but they have less ammo. And and by that point in the game, I'm like, I'm never using this. Like, unless there's a boss, I'm never even touching this gun.
Literally,
it's not worth it.
It becomes, I'm saving this for something.
Yeah, and I just think any game where you're getting like stronger in any way, whether it's XP or souls or guns or health or whatever, it's a different genre than this.
Sure. It's the question of, I think you hit upon it with like survival. That's like, how do you render survival in an interactive context, or like what does survival mean? And as I was playing it, like I started to develop a working theory of like survival is maybe about the breakdown of rules, or like it's something about, because a top level, like I said, like I tried to play the game as a pacifist. I was like, it was twofold. It was one, I know about how Resident Evil's designed, and two, it was like, I'm gonna do an interesting modern twist on this. I'm not some ape. I'm not driven by bloodlust. I'm a grown-ass man.
We'll see about that.
Huh?
We'll see about that.
We'll see. So one of my big ideas is that rules dissolve in survival scenarios. Like you get down to what you like need to do to get by in this game. So I started as a pacifist. I start killing because it's like navigating the house becomes more important. Super metatextually on our Good Luck Have Fun episode. Oh, it's exclusive to Patreon subscribers. We talked about how we're not going to skip through the door transitions.
Oh, dude, I'm so happy you're bringing this up. Yep.
After like an hour or two, I was just like, I'm skipping through these door transitions. I don't know if
my heart just broke. I literally have in my notes, why did Sean make the point of not skipping the door sequences? Because I wanted to talk more about that. Oh,
sure.
Tell me.
It was just, I need to survive. I've got other considerations. I've got other things to care about. This isn't about being immersed in a house no more. This is about like escaping this fucking place. Excuse my language. Over time, it's just like, I just want to get out of here. And it's not just, I want to complete this game in time to record a podcast.
Maybe it is.
That's part of it. The arc of the game over time, like it goes from a curiosity of like, what is this place? What happened here? To just like, I don't care what happened here. I just got to get out of here. Like, it's all fucked up. That's what happened. I got to go. And
you got scared.
I got scared. So I started skipping through the doors. Oh my God. I'm going to reveal something real.
It broke my heart. It breaks my heart to hear that.
You want me to break your heart a little bit more?
Yeah.
So early on in the game, I was like, I have to use ink ribbons. Ink ribbons are vital to the sense of tension in the game.
Ink ribbons are how you save the game, and they're a consumable item with limited. I don't know how many there are.
It's like 20 tops.
No, I think I saved more than. Oh, but maybe it's different on Jill.
Maybe you're in la Jill land where everything is peaches and cream.
At the end of the game, it tells you how many saves, and I think mine was like 21 or something like that.
Sure,
but maybe it's less on Chris. Yeah.
I mean, this is a push and pull, right? Like, I don't think I should have been playing on Chris hard mode. I don't think I should.
When I spoke to Resident Evil aficionado John, he was like, I told him he shouldn't play on Chris.
He told it to me straight up. He was like, I don't know, brother. But I figured it would be good fodder for the pod.
Someone pressured you in Discord, was like, someone's got to play Chris. I don't know who it was.
I think it was just an easy, like, Alon will play Jill because he's never played Resident Evil. I've played but like, I have not played Resident Evil. Like,
nah.
I've given up on this game multiple times for multiple reasons in the past.
As Jill, not even as Chris.
So, when the game, okay, I'm just going to come right out and
break my heart.
I started save stating.
Oh yeah.
Like 2 hours into the game.
Okay.
And like,
okay.
Because initially I was like,
That's
I'm gonna save state in a way that like accommodates just like restarting faster. Like I always would do the save state in the save room, but like
right.
As time went on, like I started doing multiple stages of save states that were like.
I understand. That breaks my heart less than skipping door sequences.
Why? Did you watch every door sequence in the game?
1,000,000%.
Okay.
It's part of the pace of play for me. I'm always kicking it to sports, but I can't watch. Like if I'm watching a baseball game, there's time between pitches. Like that's what baseball is. There's time between pitches. Okay. I don't want to see pitch. It's too much. Like what if I'm watching a football game? There's time between the plays. I know when the commercial breaks are. I take a mental, like my brain goes like, boom, powers down.
Okay.
Relax. So I get through something crazy in Resident Evil. sometimes I'm just running from a hunter zombie and I hit a door. Huge door sequence, big, safe. Let's go.
Lord knows what's on the other side
Kill
of the door.
a humongous spider. There's 1,000 small spiders that are like exploding at my feet.
Yeah.
Door safe. There's little spiders can't open doors. Pace of play. Respect the game. Let's go. Go back in, and all of them are gone. Beautiful. The doors work just as I imagined. To me, it's just a core part of the game.
Well, when you're living...
I wasn't Chris. Yeah, I wasn't Chris.
Well, in the world of Jill, everything is just, you can go through a door and you're not going to get murdered on the other side by something you...
And I got bullets and I got inventory.
I think I don't think I screwed up because at a certain point, I mean, whatever.
You had to get through the game.
I had to get through the game.
People think this job is freaking easy. This job's hard, dude. Playing a full game, taking notes.
I mean, look, the taking the notes is the easy part. The playing the game is the hard part. I play a game for 5 minutes. I could talk about it for an hour.
And I'm such a
That's a promise.
I realized playing this game when I was thinking about, I'm always thinking about my roots of competitive Quake 2 and Counter-Strike. And
okay.
I'm just in the video game world, I'm like such a bro. I'm such a jock. And like I'm a cocky first person shooter PC gamer, you know, like
performance.
I remember way back when we started this podcast, I was explaining to my mom what the podcast is, and she was just like, "What if you can't beat the game?" And I was like, "Do you know who I am?
Ma,
you freaking kidding me?" But games are hard.
Your mom had no faith in you.
Like, are you effing kidding me? My mom never played tank controls. My mom never played ink ribbons, limited saves, poison gas, like all of these things. These are different difficulties than just outskilling a human in a arena.
In an arena with like a clock that's like you're only going to be playing this for 5 minutes whether you win or lose. Player, like
yeah, it's way different.
It's extremely different. Your mom had the wisdom.
She knew more than I knew. It turns out,
and that's why for the next game club we're considering something a little more. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, it'll be a poll in Discord. It's another reason to join Discord. But we're thinking action, linear, hack and slash, maybe platformer, maybe. Just you move, you groove, you have a good time, type of thing.
It's a container because the container, and let's bring it back to Resident Evil.
Yeah, bring it back to Resident Evil.
The container of Resident Evil is gigantic. Like it is, you can break it down in terms of square footage and be like, well, the map size pales in comparison to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Yeah. But it's not about that. It's about like the density of interactions and choices within the space. And it's like, if you don't know what you're doing in this game, Lord knows how long it will take. Like, Lord knows.
Man.
I lost multiple hours just hammering away at like a suspicion I had, or totally. Like a thing that seemed telegraphed, but then like through research I realized like there's this sequence in the game where you end up in the guardhouse, right? That's Jill goes to the guardhouse. Yes.
Yeah, I went to the guardhouse.
Okay.
Without save states.
Okay. In the guardhouse, there's like a very clear telegraphing of like, Chris can't mix chemicals. And so it was like, oh, Rebecca's the person who you don't even know about.
I don't know about Rebecca. Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many directions to take this game. But the point right now I'm talking about containers.
Yeah, tell me about containers.
And time containers. And that the game clearly telegraphs, oh, I should make some special potion to hurt this big plant to get out of this house or whatever. But then the game tells you Chris can't make the potion. And so it's like, okay, so I got to find someone who can make the potion. And this isn't my big Rebecca section. I'm gonna be riffing on Rebecca later in the episode. We got to talk Rebecca. I want to hear about Barry.
Oh, yeah.
You
Wait,
got
is Barry not in your game and Rebecca's, because Rebecca's not in mine?
I know nothing of Barry. We'll save it. That's later. For now, point is the game is clearly telling me Rebecca needs to be mixing these chemicals. I tried to find Rebecca for an hour and a half. I tried to trigger an animation. I watched a long play of the game where it's Chris got grabbed and then Rebecca showed up, and it didn't happen in my game. And then I went completely off the rails. I started asking ChatGPT, how do I do this?
No.
Just how do I do this? And ChatGPT is giving me inaccurate information. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to just announce I'm done with ChatGPT. I'm done.
This game has way too many versions to successfully look anything up. As you know, last night as I was beating the game, I was 100% sure that I just screwed my entire playthrough up because I didn't have the third Mo disc to get through the not necessary puzzle. And I started looking it up. I'm the Resident Evil 1, you don't have Mo disc. And it's just giving me Resident Evil remake, director's cut. I'm like, this is all wrong. None of this applies to me. I couldn't find a single thing about it.
You're trying to figure out what to do, and the Google results you're getting are how to do the thing as Chris in a different version of the game.
Crazy.
All of this is very much outside of the game, though, right? This is us trying our best to survive.
We're all over the place.
The world of, and I think that's part of, I'm okay. Look, it's a sadness that I'm using save states. It's a sadness.
That's fine.
And I'm
totally
talking
fine.
Hey, thanks, man.
Skipping the doors. That hurts.
Look,
that stinks.
I could tell you another thing. I made a rule to myself of I'm never going to kill a dog.
Oh, I killed those dogs.
Lord,
there ain't no way.
You got to put them down. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, but you got to do it in a survival situation. So, containers.
It's us or them,
It's us or them. The time is ticking. Thank God there's no food meter in this game. If you have to be thinking about food.
Totally off topic, but it's funny you mention that because I have in my notes, is this a survival game? You don't have to maintain any bars.
Is this a survival game? You don't have to hit any trees.
Yeah, because maintaining bars was my sort of this is a definition of a survival game.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure my food's up, my drink is up, my resources up at all times, and they're constantly depleting. But it's a different type of survival game.
Well, I think the survival, what do they call it? Survival crafting?
Survival horror.
But I'm referring to the more bar-oriented survival games like a Minecraft or a Rust.
I think they're just called survival games.
Just
aren't
survival games?
Yeah, I think so.
I did not even consider the lineage from this to a Minecraft.
Right?
Because they're such different things. You're right.
Yeah, Subnautica's an action adventure survival game.
You gotta get those air bubbles because you're underwater.
Yeah. You need air. You need to constantly refill your food and your water intake.
Can we just agree to call your health how loud is the ice cream truck?
I love that this happens every episode. An ice cream truck goes by your window. It's now lore. It's an Easter egg for our listeners.
The summer 2024 of Wide Flank.
Yes.
Point is,
you were saying you never even considered the lineage of this to those kind of survival games
because they are such phenomenally different designs.
So different that. It actually bugs me a little bit that they both use the same word, survival.
Sure.
Because they're so different.
You should write a letter.
Yeah, I'm editing the Wikipedia as we're talking.
Good.
Yeah.
Get them.
Yeah, got them.
Jimmy Wales.
Got them. Yeah, don't starve in those kind of games. Yeah.
Wrong. Do starve. Can we just call the health bar It's the everything bar. You're eating those herbs. You're getting hurt, but you're also getting hungry. It's also the game happens probably within like a 12-hour time frame. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm going down this pathway. There's much more to talk about.
You ever notice how your health is never good? It's
Just
only fine.
Yeah, I actually did note. Like, I sort of clocked it and just disregarded it, but I was like, yeah, it's never good. It's just green fun.
Ain't nothing good in Resident Evil. At best, it's fine.
At best,
it's fine.
You're okay.
You're okay.
You're not great,
but you're weak and you could die. But you're fine.
You're fine. Figure it out. You've got this.
Yeah, you're fine. If you ain't dying, what'd you say? If you ain't dying in Resident Evil,
you ain't playing.
You already dead.
You already dead. But I do want to alight upon another idea I had about the game, which is that the game is generous. Ironically enough.
Tell me more.
Because the game is so ungenerous. Because up front, it's like, what the fuck is this? I've ran out of bullets and this man is biting me. Because once you acclimate yourself to the reality that the game isn't going to give you anything, every time it does give you something feels like incredible.
Is this
it feels
Stockholm syndrome or something?
Possibly, quite possibly.
But I feel the same though. Like when you hit a save room and the tunes start playing and no zombies allowed in here. You're just
gonna
I'm just gonna put my controller down, vibe out for a little bit. Nice safety, safe. Like if the game really wanted to be evil and scary, like there would be no save room with a magic box and like sometimes acid rounds for your bazooka in there. It would just be hell all the time.
The save room would have a secret door in it that would open.
Yeah.
What if that, I'm not trying to do armchair designer, but what if some point early in the game they had a zombie surprise you in a save room such that you never feel comfortable ever in the game?
Honestly, love it.
Who's to say?
The camera angle stuff that they do in this game, I love the fixed cameras. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I think they could have gone even harder. I mean, there's technical limitations on what they could have done and maybe how many different angles they could have shown or whatever. But I do love when you see all of a sudden I don't really have an example in mind. You just get a weird angle. All of a sudden you're just like, I've never seen the game from this point of view or like this far away or this close up out of nowhere. And that throws me off. As soon as that happens, I see something from an angle that I'm not used to seeing. I'm like, it's a boss fight. I'm about to die or sometimes in the save rooms, even though it's safe and even though the music's playing and I'm vibing, even just like a fucked up camera angle that's like from the window into this, I'm like, what the fuck? Something's about to jump at me or something.
It's like disorienting enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like these deeper sense feelings of just like something's not quite right here. And I think another way that the game does that, because the game very much is occupied with visuals, but it's also very occupied with sound. Like the way that the game uses sound is feels super, super modern and substantial in that it telegraphs information that the player isn't even certain of. Because when you hear footsteps, it's sort of like a base level, oh, what's that over there? I can't see what's happening, but I know there's something.
Yes,
and that's like a classic horror trick, right?
Yeah.
Of plant the seed of an idea and then let the audience imagine what they will, kind of.
I'm obsessed with that kind of idea of our identity tied with the identity of the character we're controlling. It's different in different games, and I don't really have this flushed out, but
okay.
I don't know. I didn't feel like I'm Jill in this game. And Jill can see things that I can't see. And Jill knows things that I don't know. But also I'm I'm like sympathizing with Jill and I'm like scared for Jill
Sure.
more than I'm like scared for myself, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like
It does.
I'm controlling Jill and I hear like the little snapping sounds of a hunter walking around. And I'm like, fuck. You know,
Look
like,
out, Jill.
Jill's gonna fucking die.
Sure. So, okay. So that's like interesting because I think I had an experience of, and I don't know if this is gender oriented. I don't even think this is gender oriented. I think it's just like
no, not for me.
temperament oriented.
Yeah.
I did have a pretty vivid feeling of like, I'm Chris.
Okay.
And I don't know how I got to that solution, but I did end up with like that sort of. So this is my lead into like the Rebecca / Barry part of the conversation, I suppose, because for me, the presence of the like side character who's not your protagonist character like felt like super significant. And I'm trying to use broad language, but I'm talking about Rebecca. And I'm sure Barry is a completely different character. So
yeah,
it's like
I'm really excited to hear about Rebecca.
Rebecca is this like very clearly like fresh faced. She's like a new member of Stars. She's like, I just started a month ago. And she's all plucky. And in the way that like you like were concerned for Jill, I like ended up feeling more concerned for Rebecca than I ever did. I mean, I was concerned for it's not like I was like, Chris has got this. He's a big, strong military boy. It was more just like, I'm playing this game. I might get killed. If I get killed, that's my bad, whatever. So with Rebecca, it becomes this circumstance. You meet this person, and very early on, she asks you, like, should I come with you or should I stay? And like that alone was like, I don't know, man.
There's so many decisions in this game. Yeah.
There's so many choices. And like when I made the choice of like stay or like whatever choice I made with Rebecca, I was left feeling like, wait, like, was that the right thing to do? Like, is Rebecca okay? Where's Rebecca? Like, have I killed Rebecca? Like, what's going to happen with Rebecca? Such that anytime I encountered Rebecca elsewhere in the game, I was just like, oh, thank God.
We're also like traumatized from just other games. I feel like we're just like, you're running around as Chris, and I'm imagining that you're thinking like, at any point, you're just going to get like a mission failed, Rebecca died. And you're just like, no, I should have brought her with me. Fuck.
Yeah. And it's like, you just have to like live with your choices or whatever. Have you played Dead Rising?
Nah.
It's another Capcom game that literally you're trying to save people from zombies in a mall. And it like, when you don't save them, it's like, Rebecca has died. Like, it's just like, okay.
You fucked up.
But so like, I mean, what else is like, I have a million other things to say about Rebecca because I do think of like that use of character as like a really interesting side component because the driving of the game is I'm this person navigating this space by myself, largely. But there are these moments of like character and storytelling that like you just stumble into at different points in time.
So the way Barry works,
tell me about Barry.
At least the way I was interpreting it is like I'm completely alone. Like Barry's not really part of my playthrough. He's only part of cutscenes. So like I never felt like I have like someone that I need to be thinking about like, oh, I hope they don't die or whatever. Like he would only just pop up at some weird cutscene. I'm like, oh, fucking Barry's back. And like he would just, you know, we've touched on the acting bits, but like, what can you say?
The acting from like development history, the acting was Japanese developers directing American actors. And there was some quote about like, they just kept telling the American actors to speak more slowly because for some reason there weren't subtitles in the American release. So it was like, we got to make sure that everyone knows what you're saying. So you have to speak super slowly.
Yeah, I kind of want to defend the acting, which is maybe that's my like hot take of the episode. But apparently, based on research, in the old days of voice acting in video games, you get into a studio or like into a booth or whatever in a studio, and you just get a spreadsheet of every line that you have in the game.
Yeah.
with absolutely zero context. You have no idea when that you're saying it, why you're saying it, who you're saying it to, what the situation is. And you just say it a bunch of different ways with like different emphasis on different words. And then they just send all the waves to a Japanese audio engineer whose first language was not English. And he's just like, this one, and then this one, and then this one.
Yeah.
So it's all these like Frankenstein audios that are totally out of context, stitched together to whatever sounded best to his ear.
Sure.
Because I was noticing that like a lot of the bad acting specifically is bad editing. Like, not that the script is good and not that the voice acting is good, but specifically there's like a second of silence. A second is really long. A second of silence at the beginning of all of these sound cues. It's just like, here's a lockpick. It may come in handy. I'm just like, what was that? Like,
sure.
Someone needed to edit that. Like,
as much as the game is occupied with like realism and naturalism,
Yeah.
like the reality of a Japanese team rendering American character, like
yeah.
that's not really a question of reality. It's just like a question of production.
Yes,
like it's
exactly.
And you read in these interviews that like they became aware that it was problematic very fast because like I'm sure like American game journalists of like 1996.
Oh, they got panned. It was the one thing they were like, this game's great, except this is horrible.
This sucks. And it's like I don't know. I didn't even like clock the performances. Like they were clearly like big. They were clearly like ridiculous, but it's like this whole thing is kind of ridiculous.
I mean, maybe Barry is more over the top than Rebecca. I don't know. I don't have the experience, but they were so ridiculous. Like it was complete like comic relief in a way. It was just like, like I have so many points in my notes that are just all caps. Like, oh my God. Like,
sure.
Like, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Just like, what is this? Like,
hell yeah.
Barry, like, tasting the blood on the ground and be like, I hope this isn't Chris's blood. It's like, what do you do? Like,
fucking rules.
Like, everything was just like, holy fucking shit. But I did want to, like, slightly defend them and step away from it. But, like, it's great. Like, I don't know what to say. It's other than, like, it's funny. It's great. It's B-movie. It didn't take away from the game at all for me. Instead, it was just kind of this other funny layer that was on top of the game.
I don't want to be like purely contrarian about it, but I do kind of want to argue on behalf of like, if we're talking about character, if we're talking about like what makes these people stick in our mind, it's like, and especially this early in like the development of game storytelling, it's like, Jill, don't go. And like the fact that like that's Chris's energy, like fine, that's Chris. Like that's Chris. He talks like this, and it's just like it's enough for me. It's just like like that's him. And Rebecca's just like, hey, how's it going? And it's like this is absurd, but they're rendered like it's not a realistic character. Like the reality of the game, I think, comes through much more in the structure of the building, the sound design, some of the game design choices. Like, I just want to riff a little bit about how in the Jill version, does the Jill version happen to like show where you are on the map? Like, is that a thing that?
It's like blinking on the map, like whatever section you're in, sort of. Chris doesn't show where you are.
Chris doesn't show you jack shit. It just shows you the layout, such that like
that's wild.
But I loved it. I mean, it.
It's just like so hardcore.
It forces you. It's hardcore, and it forces you to like think about the map the way that you would think about a map in real life.
Yeah, true. You're like, oh, this shape is, I have to be here. I have to be here.
You start to be able to identify what hallways are what. And like, it's there were times where I was like rotating the device I was using to be like, oh, like this is where I'm at.
What'd you play it on? You play it handheld?
I have a handheld. That's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
I do it all handheld, baby.
Nice. Love it.
But yeah, like the game's reality is not rendered through character. Like the game's reality is rendered through design, game design, sound design, and visual design. And I think it does like I am getting a little stuck on like evaluating the performances of the game.
This is where I started with in regards to like the critics and stuff. It's just like, can we stop saying that like this is good and that's bad and this is better and that's worse and like these graphics are better and these suck and this game's obsolete? It's like, I'm not here to be like, wow, what an acting performance, you know, like this is fucking immortality. These actors just all knocked it out of the park. I would never say that, but just saying like objectively, this is bad and this part of the game sucks is also, I'm not okay with, because like it's funny, it sticks with me. Metal Gear, right? I brought up Metal Gear at the beginning. What's more fucking ridiculous than the acting in Metal Gear? Like, people unanimously think that the acting in Metal Gear is good when it's like the most over the top, like bullshit American action in a funny way. I like it. Yeah. But they're saying that this one is objectively bad when it's also just like really weird and funny. And, you know,
I think a thing that the design aspirations of Metal Gear and Resident Evil share, like aside from the fact that like they're both made by Japanese people in 1995.
Japanese people making American movies, kind of,
yeah. It is the aspiration of like rendering a higher level of fidelity, and I don't think it's as simple as like more like movies. Like I think that's a shorthand for, and that's why I keep trying to like pound upon like the reality is not in its storytelling or its like cinematics. Yeah. It's like the reality is in like the core elements of the game.
Yeah, I think basically what I'm trying to say is thinking back to what you were saying at the very beginning, where you're like, you either run into the inventory issue and are like, this game sucks, fuck this, or you just accept it and like participate with it, and play with it. To me, that's like the same with this acting stuff. It's like you're either coming in with like a negative mindset and you don't really want to interact with the game, or you're having a bad time. And so like this just makes it, you know, this just like sort of punctuates your bad time. And you're just like, this sucks. Like, I can't believe this fucking game, blah, 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 is considered a masterpiece, which a lot of takes are. Like a lot of takes are like, this is Resident Evil 1. Are you kidding me? This is so bad.
So I showed it to a friend and her gut response was, this isn't even that scary. And I was just like, how dare you? Yeah. And then I tried to show her the intro cinematic to be like, pretty scary, huh? Yeah, and like as we're watching it, I'm like, this isn't very scary.
Yeah, like, it's not, that's not the scary part. That's the funny part.
There is a funny part. Look, I don't know where else to slot this quote, but I'm just gonna go for it. It's Hideki. It's Shinji Mikami on, he had an idea for the game to become a comedy after the third week of gameplay.
What?
Which, so I don't think this is like actually relevant. It's just like tangential, because it's not like, I think I don't have an idea of the game as like functioning as a comedy and that serves it. I think of the comedy, the funny aspects of it as like, just like part of it in a way. Okay. Like it's, this is such, man, there's a million ways to go with this, but I'm just going to say what Mikami said about in the planning stage, I had come up with an idea for a method where the game could switch to being a comedy after the third week of gameplay.
What?
I have no idea what that means.
Whatever that means, yeah.
I ended up discarding the idea when it became apparent that it would take an unreasonable amount of time to implement. I personally felt that the horror and comedy genres had many things in common and were very closely linked. I think if I'd had a chance to experiment more, the results could have been really entertaining. So, I think what we can take from this is like, it's not like comedy was not a consideration, but it's also like, I don't know. Again, I'm finding like it really hard to stick a landing with this idea because I think it's a question of perspective. It's like how does one process tone in a game?
Yeah. I feel like I almost got lucky that I was in the right mindset at the time and I liked the game. And therefore all of these things I liked. Yeah. You know, and like that is just my perspective. Like a lot of criticism, I think, is sort of explaining things
the way they should be.
Yeah, like explaining like this is why this works or this is why this is bad. Like explaining something after the fact, giving credit or discredit, I guess, for a decision that might have been intentional or might have been unintentional. Like as if they sat down and were like, this is the best action movie script of all time. And that's what they thought when they were filming this. Or maybe they just like English is their second language and they ran out of time and money and were like, this is good enough. You know, like
it's easy to imagine two guys looking at each other, grinning and going, pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And like, again, yeah, I don't really know what landing I'm trying to stick either, but like that perspective thing, what can you do about that? Like, I think that you just have to try and approach it with like as open a mind as you can and try. And I mean, that's part of like Game Club is like, we have to beat these games, right? A game that you've bounced off of 4 times.
Lord.
Or maybe more than 4 times.
400 times.
400 times. Like being in the mindset of like, I'm going to beat it. You have to kind of like adapt and be like, oh, this is how this game works. Like, cool. I'm going to play with that now.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. They made this decision. Let's try it out. Before just being like, again, like I keep referencing other reviews I saw on YouTube and stuff. Is just like, this is a game that's a classic. This piece of shit game. You know, I'm just like, whoa, relax.
This isn't the kind of game that I want to play.
Yeah.
And it's like when you do set aside your preconceived notions about the game, you can adapt to it and dig deeper and find like experiences that are super unique and like super, I don't know. It's this question of like when you're disciplined with something, this is getting real heady, real quick.
I can't wait to hear it. Yeah.
But these are entertainment products, right? Produced by a Japanese corporation.
True.
The Capsule Company.
True.
Capcom. And what's my point? My point is just that like it's a game. Resident Evil is itself a game that like demands you bend to it while also wanting you to have fun with it. And something I wanted to make sure I said, and I'm not sure if it's directly connected, but it's like you think about what the goals of this game are. And we were just going back and forth a little bit about like the humor of the game and tone of the game and what does the game want from us. And I think like when the game sets out to be a horror experience, when like the goal of the game is to summon fright, it for one, it works, and it works in like a dozen different ways that like I don't know if we've even dove that deep.
We haven't talked about anything. This is Wide Flank, baby. Every podcast I listened to did the opposite. They just told their playthrough of the game chronologically, and I was like, I don't want to listen to this. Not to toot our own horn, but we talk about different stuff here. If you want that, there's 1,000 places to get that.
We're getting personal. We're saying, hey, Alon.
Hey.
How are you?
Yeah. Jill, how are you? Barry.
Oh, you haven't, I was going to riff on what you were saying about like, that's like, we could be talking about like, then this happened, which affected that, like it's in a linear way. And like, I have a lot of notes that are like pretty just pragmatic. The dogs will straight up leave you alone if you're chill. That's a game design that we could talk about that. We could, Rebecca fucking rocks. What the fuck? Bees. Like it's, what am I saying? I don't even know. Just that like, I don't want to get too metatextual about Wide Flank. But I think like part of what we're trying to do with Wide Flank is just talk about people's experiences of playing games and people's experiences of making games. And I think like that tendency to like evaluate every design decision as a yes, no.
Right.
I don't know where that critical standard comes from necessarily. Like, I think early games reporting tends to be a lot of like consumer facing, like,
Yeah. This is a fun thing that you should rent.
it's worth your time.
Yeah, right.
But there's a whole other scholarly discussions of game design. Also, they have value, but that's not what Y Flink is. Anywho, what are we talking about? Let's bring it back to Resident Evil.
For some reason,
Yeah.
I don't know why, when you were just saying that, what I was thinking of is like one of the biggest like fuck yeah moments that I had while playing Resident Evil 1
Yeah.
was when the game had a pop-up and said, "This key is now useless. Would you like to discard it?" And I was like, let's fucking go.
So when I say Resident Evil is generous, that's what I mean.
Yes.
That it's like in this game where it's like, oh, what do I do? Like, do I need to keep this key or not? Like, the game will be like, nah, dog.
Don't worry about it.
We're done with that.
Guess what? You use the lab key. Toss it. Don't care about it.
Don't worry. Exactly.
And you can't have that if you're constantly just harping on, I don't want to be playing this. I want to carry all the guns and kill everything. You're playing the wrong game. That's the wrong game. Settle down, take a deep breath during the next door animation. Don't skip it. Reset. This is the game you're playing.
Yes.
So you have to adapt to how to play it.
Yeah. So by virtue of it being a horror game that's trying to spook you, but it also wants you to like move through it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think maybe this might be a good point to, as much as we were like shouldering and trying to be like, we're talking about our experience of it.
Yeah.
Like, do you mind if we talk a little bit about some of like the hard design decisions of the game? Because I'm scrolling through my notes here and something keeps jumping out at me, which is like the moment in the game when I went Metroid mode.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe.
Or Symphony of the Night mode.
I have Symphony of the Night in my notes. I have Metroidvania in my notes in different parts. Yeah.
Let's just call it going map mode.
Yeah.
It's like you get to a point in the game where you don't know what to do. So you just start looking at your map and looking for what doors you haven't opened.
Yeah.
And then you really start like embodying the mansion. And like, that's a point in the game that only comes later. It only comes after you've like exhausted more natural routes.
Yeah.
And I think like as the game goes along, like some of those routes, oddly enough, get like a little smoother. Like, would you agree with that? That like by the time we reach the laboratory, it's like a kind of more linear.
There's
than
like
the mansion?
basically one way to go. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like on rails, but
no.
In a way, it's very linear. It's like there's a door you can't open and there's stairs. It's like, okay, I'm going down the stairs. And then it's like there's two doors that are locked and there's one you can get into. It's like, okay, I know where I'm going. Yeah.
It's a little more direct. And I think like when you first enter the mansion, it is like such a big, expansive space. And there's like so many directions that you can go in.
The mansion really is like a 3D Metroidvania vibe to it. I mean, like, you know, you could argue about like, oh, but you don't get power ups, so that's core to a Metroidvania, whatever. I'm just talking about more the structure of the mansion. It's all just what
I wanted to interject with, it's all just gating, baby.
Yeah, it's just gated over here, gated over there. Oh, I got the key. Now I can go back through the mansion to, what were those doors I couldn't open again? I have to go back through and check all the doors. Oh, okay, I get into this door, I get into that door, I can do this thing, I can do this thing. What's in my box? And you're just like, yeah, it's just this labyrinth of opening doors, unlocking doors, switching out your items, getting new items, and like learning the mansion, which like I thought I would never learn the mansion because I kept getting confused. It's really fucking confusing. But
even with your blinking map indicator.
Even with a blinking Jill map, and eventually you get there. Eventually you're not the king of the castle like a power fantasy, right? Like you don't own the mansion because you could still just die at any corner you round. Like a hunter could just be there and just jump and like literally take your head off with the claws.
Well, I think the game does a good like sort of ratcheting of like upfront it's intimidating. Then you get used to it. Then it like makes you go somewhere else. And then when you return to the mansion, it's like re-rendered as dangerous.
Yeah,
with,
exactly.
With like new enemies.
Yeah, so like you're never the king of the castle, but you do learn to navigate it in a way where you get the feeling that like, yeah, I guess like, so power fantasy, you're king in the castle, and then whatever this is, you're like, I can get away from anything. It's like a different feeling. You know what I mean? I'm like,
you're like a rogue.
Yeah, I can escape anything because
Sure.
I know where all the doors are and I know where the save rooms are. It's like you're playing tag or whatever, and it's like if I get to the save room, you can't tag me.
Well, I think it's like an interesting subversion of like the characters as rendered up front are like military power fantasy looking characters of like,
but they're so weak.
But yeah, that they're not equipped at all.
They're so weak and so scared. Yeah.
And so like as a tough guy, or tough Jill, you're forced to like run around other skills and abilities and like
So what were you saying about when you got full Symphony of the Night and Metroid mode?
Oh, just that like it felt like an important moment in the game to start to realize.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I know enough about this house that, because like, what were you saying? You were saying that like it felt like you would never know the whole house.
Yeah.
And like as the game goes on, as you're like finding new places, like you get refreshes of that feeling of like, I'll never figure out this whole space.
Yeah.
Such that like when you return back to the house, I mean, it's an interesting thing because it's like you know the physicality of the house, but because there's these like stronger creatures, knowing the house doesn't really matter anymore.
No.
Because it's like my routing is changed because of these creatures. So it's like, I know these hallways. I've already chosen violence and like I've killed all the zombies, so I go wherever I want.
Yeah.
But it's like,
and that's also a big difference between this game and the Souls-like, which I was also noting is that like, you know, especially important early game, you have very few bullets and you're just scared and you can kill a zombie and it's dead. Like you can blow its head off with a shotgun. You don't go through a door and then come back through the door and the hallway's full of zombies again.
Yeah.
You're just like, no, because it's not an action game. You actually are just like, okay, yeah, I those two zombies were closing in on me and I was 1 HP, but I got through it and I'm okay.
You've solved the combat puzzle of the two zombies in the hallway.
Exactly.
Like you've made a choice, whether measured or not. Like, I'm going to use 2 shells of ammo.
Yeah.
And often enough, the game like rewards you pretty straightforwardly. It's like you use 1 shell of ammo and like it lets you pick up a full clip of pistol ammo.
There was
something.
only one time when I really went Rambo.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned like the FMV stuff, but like there's a few times there's a hunter, a shark, a zombie, some other times where you all of a sudden are first person perspective from a evil beast.
A beast. Yeah.
And it's running towards you or swimming towards you or opening a door towards you.
It plays this amazing trick of
it's
like
fucking sick.
It shows you the environment that you've been navigating from fixed angles, but from a different perspective.
Yeah, for FPS game, all of a sudden it's like it's jumping up the elevator and going through the hall. I'm like, what is that?
That's very close to me. Like it's
So there's one part in the kitchen where there's an FMV. It opens the door. It's real. I'm like, oh fuck! But it was just a normal zombie, and you just kill it, and it's just fine. And then you go up the stairs, and you have this really tight shot of you, so you can basically. And we haven't talked about the camera that much. We did it more in the GLHF, not this episode, about how like it limits what you can see so much. It's so good for a horror game. So it's this tight shot of you. You can't really see anything. And all you hear are 4 footsteps of one of the hunters, which are the fucking weird claw people, frog gorillas.
They replace the zombies. They're wide and tough.
And they fuck you up. They jump and like tear your head off. And that was the one moment because I was 1 HP and I hadn't saved in a bit Well, I don't think Chris gets the bazooka, but I had a bazooka and I just fucking went ham. I just shot like my whole clip of bazooka because I was just like, fuck, I can't, because I can't see them. I had to blind shoot through the hallway.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, if they touch me, I'm dead.
And you had the 1 health, and so you were weighing in your mind, like, how long has it been since I saved?
I haven't saved since I got the battery and powered the elevator. And I was like, oh no. So I just went, until I heard them screaming dead. And I was just like, oh my God.
And it's like, maybe I've made the wrong choice in the macro, but in the micro, I just like, and that goes back to my theme of like, when all rules dissolve in a survival situation, ideally you wouldn't have used all your bazooka ammunition.
I would see what's happening. I have eyes. I can see. Jill can see, but I can't see. Fuck.
So you're working with the information that you have.
It's so good. I mean, the camera.
So I want to
tank controls. I want
to affirm the camera real quick.
Yeah,
because Mikami himself like talks about the camera as like they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were
doing. The camera.
Yeah.
So he says, even if you knew before looking around a corner that a zombie was going to be there, we set up blind spots so that players wouldn't be able to see the zombies immediately. And that in turn produced an uneasy feeling that caused players to feel afraid.
Hello.
Like it's very pragmatic because this is the person who's designing the horror experience.
Yeah.
So there is like a pragmatism in the way that he's talking about it. But it's the reality of like the cameras are set up the way they are to elicit an effect.
Yeah.
Like it's
if it was an exploratory game, like an open world type of game, you'd have to be able to control the camera. Because you have to be able to like look everywhere and see everything that is possibly explorable. But like and I think John references also when he was talking about his like, he doesn't use safety saves. He would rather die and reload a save for the optimal route and then, do it and save again.
The routing.
But what he mentions at the end of that is like, it's not, like he recognizes it's not a casual play style of the game, but the game isn't designed for casual exploration.
No. Yeah.
And I think the camera is very representative of that, right? Again, if it was a casual exploratory game, you would see everything. You'd either be first person and be able to look around, or you'd be third person and be able to control the camera in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's supposed to obscure your view. There are supposed to be these blind corners. You can't see the threats that are there. You can maybe only hear something. And I think that like the final boss is a really good example of this, but you have to sort of run around to find an angle, a camera angle. When I say angle, I mean camera angle.
It starts to become a game of like which angle best accommodates.
Yeah, like you need to find
the time.
Like for people who haven't played, like you have to almost run around until you get to like a 2D fighting game kind of angle where you have some separation from the enemy. So I could shoot, because it takes so long to spin and aim and shoot and get out like your 3 shots before you run again and through all these fucked up camera angles until you find another.
With on the other side of that, the enemy is designed that like it can dash at you very fast. So it's like it's constantly, and this is like the boss combat encounters kind of, well, like encountering a zombie in a hallway is like a mini version of this. Like it's a mini version of space and time considerations.
The threat is lower and they move slower and they're there roughly and it's okay. Yeah. You can always like deal with a zombie, but as the enemies get stronger and your resources maybe are wavering, or you're not prepared, you have to interact. And I mentioned this actually on the GLHF episode. I was like, I actually like the tank controls. I like the camera. But I can imagine if there's like a really difficult boss, I'm going to hate this because aiming is so hard. And the truth is, they didn't fall in that trap for me, at least. Like, it never got too mechanical for me, where I was like, I need to be able to aim better. I need to be able to see better. This fucking feels bad. It was just a different type of challenge, which I love.
Yeah. I think it's a type of challenge that makes you take very, very seriously like space in space time. Like it's a numbers game.
It is a numbers game.
It's a very like amount of ammunition, time since last save point, distance from enemy, speed of enemy, like, and all of these things come into play in different ways at different points in the game. But as we're referencing the end of the game, I just want to make sure we mention that, like, you know, the zombie's pretty spooky. It's pretty spooky to turn a corner and see a guy eating a guy.
Oh yeah.
I'm just giving a full spectrum. Then you meet a plant. Not that spooky. Big snake. Okay. Kind of spooky. Big spiders. If you're scared of spiders, very spooky. But to me, it was just like, why are there big spiders? Towards the end of the game, you get to like a boiler room, which is like the loudest room in the entire game.
Oh my God.
And the creatures that you encounter there were like genuinely disturbing. Like, it's these humanoid figures that are like
they're hanging like monkeys from the metal at the top of the power room.
Yeah.
And they jump on your fucking back. They are so fast.
They move so fast. You catch a glimpse of their bodies are like charred.
Yeah.
Like they've been burnt. Like they're just blackened forms. And you look at their face and it's just like white eyes that are big. And it's like, it actually touches like a deeper form of fear. It touches, it hit this like lizard brain, monkey brain nerve of like, I just need to get away from these things immediately. I can't process what I'm looking at. And again, the whole, as much as we're diving into how spooked we were by these guys, those guys are also a representation of what I was outlining before, which is like the numbers, the speed, the distance. Part of what makes these guys so freaky is they move faster than you.
And that's the tank controls, right? The sort of conclusion that they came to, like Mikami and them when they were making the game, is that if we're going to have fixed camera angles, up on the joystick or D-pad needs to just be forward.
Yeah.
We cannot have the camera angle change and then all of a sudden you have to change your thumb from up to right because now right is forward and then change it back to down and then up. It's like if you need to run, you're holding up the whole time and just using the left and right to turn based on whatever the camera angle is. And I got used to it. It was no problem for me. Yeah.
It's of all the different like numbers in the game, the motion is like one of the more like the motion of the player character is like, those are some of the more reliable numbers. It's just like, I know if I'm facing this way and I push this, this will happen, like, period. And it's hard to keep track of in tense moments.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to, again, mention John. Shout out to John. Big fan of Resident Evil. But he also wrote in the Discord that the later Capcom titles, the Resident Evil remake, Devil May Cry, I think there was another couple.
Right.
They keep the fixed cameras, but they changed the movement to be like the camera relative direction, except there's a system where it maintains your forward direction. So let's say you're running from something really scary, you're holding up.
Okay.
And then the camera changes to now you're at a side angle view where your character is moving left to right. Right. In the game that we played, you would still just hold up that whole time and you would move from left to right. In this game, if you were previously holding up, you keep holding up. But if you're just like walking, you have to switch to right because that is now forward at your new camera angle.
And does that, if you release the stick, is that what happens? Or is it like it's
as soon as you let go of your previous forward direction, I'm basically just quoting John here, the new forward relative to the camera is updated and you might find yourself running in the wrong direction. It's just like, I don't know, maybe it's a skill diff. Here I am being a cocky FPS jock again, right? But
forward's forward.
It was very normal for me to get used to this after a little bit of playing, and I could run through the hallways and not run in the wrong directions. And yet, this is unanimously seen as something completely obsolete and bad and should never be in games again.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think what John and what we're talking about is like something of a solution of
It's
like
a good solution.
How do we well, okay, yeah, because what's in the game, I think we all agree is a good solution.
Yeah.
And then what we see in like later games that are iterated upon this original design, like a Devil May Cry, like that's an attempt at like, oh, so you don't like the tank controls, huh? Like, what about this?
Yeah.
And it's like, because I was about to be like, design a better system that works with like the fixed camera.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if you can. Like, I don't, and the developers time and time again in the interviews with them, like they have to like be like, we know that the controls aren't good.
I know.
But they worked. And it's like, I think that's the developers, reckoning with the critical and audience response of like, I hate the tank. But it's like, truly, I'm asking the question of like, what would you design better without like completely overhauling the perspective of the game? At which point it's like, that's not solving anything.
Right.
It's just
the only thing I can think of that might satisfy all parties is like literally on rails, like press A to run forward. And you just run forward no matter what the angle is. And you like lose the ability to like turn and look around when you're running. But like, I guess it sort of solves it, but that's basically the same as just holding up. So I don't know what the problem is.
I think it might have to do with the fact that like it's a 3-dimensional game, and like part of like the promise of 3D is like I go wherever I want. Like I get to navigate this space.
And to me, that's just a different type of game.
It's a different type of game.
That's just a different type of game. This is not an open world. This is not an explore everything casually, look around, take your time kind of game.
Yeah. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. This ain't no Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
No, and I actually love the shots sometimes also. Like I think sometimes it looks really stunning. Like this angle is sick and scary and ominous. And I'm like, whoa, beautiful. I have like 20 screenshots saved on my computer of just like me standing as Jill with my hand on my hip, like looking at something because it looks cool.
And often enough, the game will use those angles to like sell a point or like punctuate. The first time you encounter the dogs, I don't know how it plays out in the Jill
famous dog hallway.
It's like an L-shaped hallway, right?
It's the dog hallway.
The dog hallway. When you exit the dog hallway, the image that you're presented with is your player character just facing the camera from like torso up. And it's just like you just went through this really intense thing, and then your military man is looking at you, and it's just like, all right, like, yeah, we did that.
We got through that.
And then like again, it's oh man. So like we're over the course of this episode, I think we've hit upon like what two of like the dominant conversations are about this game, which are like the performances. It's silly. The controls, they're silly. But I think both of us are pretty aligned in different ways of like, yeah, maybe they're silly, but it is what it is. It works. Like this is what it is.
Yeah.
Like it's not about what either of us think is better or right or wrong. It's more just like, what is the game setting out to do and how does it achieve it?
Right. I mean, for me, the this is another like genre defining maybe characteristic, but for me, a main thing that the game is trying to do, like you're saying, like what is the game trying to do, is like makes you feel vulnerable and fragile. Like that's what's scary, and that's what's unique about this game, right? We've mentioned the power fantasy many times, right? But
yes,
I'm talking more specifically about like everything that you're comfortable with and used to having in video games is sort of stripped away. But I said before, kind of joking, like I have eyes, but I can't see shit, right? Like set piece cameras, I'm used to being able to look around. I can't see anything. Tank controls, I'm used to be able to go wherever I want, look at whatever I want, but like I'm limited. There's really only forward and backwards. There's no move to the sides, right? I'm used to that. I can't move while shooting. I can barely even aim. You can only move up I mean, you can only aim up, straight, or down. And like, good luck if there's like a crow, just run because you're never going to hit it.
Yes. Anything small becomes like especially problematic.
Limited saves, like no power creep. You're very much not the hero in this game. You're more similar to Prey. I mean, you are just like surviving. You're never stronger. You're never getting faster. The zombies, meanwhile, all get stronger, all get faster. I mentioned before, you get better guns. You get limited ammo. Like, you probably shouldn't even use it at that point because you know there's going to be something bigger and stronger around the next corner.
Yes.
So, like, all of these things to me, when I was trying to think, is like, what is a survival horror game? Like, what did this game define? To me, is this like the disempowerment of the player?
Disempowerment of the player. Yeah. Like, and I think we've talked about it already in the episode with regards to like the player needing to bend to the game in a way. Like the player needing to learn the rules of this game. And if this game is like seminal in any way, it's like it's demanding the player learn so many things in a way. Like in 1996, like again, I think of Alone in the Dark, and like I don't know how much we should talk about it because I don't think either of us has played.
I've only watched a little. Yeah.
You know, like I wonder what an Alone in the Dark player can bring to an experience of Resident Evil.
Right.
But like Resident Evil as it is, it demands you learn these different components. And some of those are, ironically enough, some of these things, like as much as the game is about disempowerment, the game tries to let you feel like you have control over something. Like if the game was just like full bore, you can't do nothing ever. Like what would the game even be? Like,
right. That doesn't make sense fully. I mean, you still kill zombies. You still beat the boss, right? Like you're obviously able to do stuff. You're just weak. You're just slow and weak and fragile, and you turn slowly and can't aim well, and like all of these things that in pretty much every other game I've ever played are guarantees that you're going to get that. Like if I have a gun in a game, I'm going to aim and be better at aiming than whatever I'm shooting, right? If I play through a story of a game, I'm going to get stronger and a backpack and armor and like, and by the end I'm a fucking tank and like all these things. Yeah.
The progression of the game is going to be, well, it's to bring it, everybody loves Souls-likes, right?
Souls-like.
We all love Souls-likes.
No comment.
The point of those, part of what like I think what people love about those games is that like the play happen, like the learning happens up here. Like I think no, whatever. I don't know enough about Souls-likes, but all I'm going to say about
I want to hear it though.
Just like you don't learn by like attrition. Like it's not a game of purely just like acquiring experience points. Like you can't just grind it out. I think I'm wrong on that front. I think like in some Souls games you can grind certain things out. I don't know.
Loosely, yeah.
Resident Evil is not a game where you can just grind things out. Like I don't think. Like I'm saying that pretty confidently, but less what the game isn't, more what the game is that it's a game that the mastery is like in the player's mind. Like the player internalizes the behavior of the enemies. The player internalizes the layout of the mansion. The player has to internalize, oh, that door needed this key. Oh, I have this key now. And that's where like the Metroid design comes in a little bit, is like...
And you have to internalize your fragility. I keep saying the same thing, but like you will learn somewhere or another that you can't just run around and frag out. Like you'll just die. You'll just keep dying forever until you learn that lesson, right? Like
until you learn.
There's I feel like there's not even enough bullets in the game to kill everything. Like it probably doesn't even exist. A couple of games that came out the same year are Quake and Tomb Raider, right? Like Quake, quintessential id game, came from Doom, power fantasy, so fast, kill literally everything, no resource management. get stronger, go, kill,
Yeah,
kill.
yeah.
Tomb Raider, I mean, I never actually played it, but you're the hero, you're some hot babe, you jump and do backflips while shooting your dualies in the air. You're the best. You're fucking unstoppable.
Tomb Raider, I would put in a similar class as Resident Evil and Metal Gear of like, it's janky enough that you're just like, I gotta figure out how to navigate this rather than just like,
basing it off of like highlights on YouTube. It just seems like a run and gun. Like you just like, obviously there's a lot of platforming and other stuff, but like in terms of like the fighting and how powerful you are, you just run around like shooting, jumping, backflip, everything.
Tomb Raider is an example of a game that I would like maybe want to cover for Wide Flank, but that would also like stress me the hell out. Like it's a game that like I want to demand myself to play, but like I don't know how much fun it'll be. Which, you know, Resident Evil was extremely fun. Like it's there were moments
I loved it.
There are moments of me too. It like all once all's told, it's like playing it for the podcast is one thing because like there is this like pressure on it in a way, but like there are moments even when you're like preparing for the podcast that like you do settle into a comfortable like I sort of know what's going on in this place. Like the sense of progression in this game I think goes beyond like I'm winning, I'm gonna finish this, I'm getting stronger. It's like the sense of I know this hallway, I know how to get to the save room very fast, I know that zombie is gonna be there. It evolves into something like that I've never experienced in another game, which is like this like bizarre sense of comfort. I don't know how to I'm just gonna try to formulate this idea and I'm gonna tell it like an anecdote, which is that so at a certain point in the game, I'm going killer mode. I'm killing everyone. I'm fragging out. I know that I can get that zombie out of my way if I shoot it with a shotgun. And there was one zombie, though, that I didn't need to kill because they weren't on a critical path. It's like the first room that you go to in the game is like very recognizable, sonically, visually recognizable. It's got a checkerboard floor. There's a persistent tick
grandfather clock
of a grandfather clock.
Wait, so Chris goes there too?
Oh,
okay, I didn't know.
Yeah. So on the second floor of that, there's like a walkway around the top of the room, and there's a zombie on each of the walkways. And I'm going aggro mode. So the zombie on one of the walkways is the one that killed me and like ruined my run initially. So a crucial space of that first room is such a crucial space. It's bizarre how much they do with that one room.
It's iconic. Yeah, it's awesome.
So sick. But the bizarre little twist that I'm trying to communicate is that the comfort of the game, that as intense as this game is, there are moments of great comfort that like surprise you in a way. And for me, like after I'd gone aggro mode, after I'd gone killing, I knew I didn't have to kill that one zombie.
Yeah.
So I just let him be. And then throughout the game, after that point, anytime I would pass through that room, I would just see the zombie on the other side of the screen, just like sort of standing there looking at me. And it sort of evolved into this just like, hey there, buddy.
Hey, pal. Remember me?
Hey, no harm, no foul. Hope you're having a good one. Like, it was just this like respectful distance. Yeah. And it's like the zombies, they move from being the dominant threat to this like comfortable, familiar thing. Like as the game is wrapping up, as you're like exiting the laboratory, there's like a few zombies, and like the sensation I felt wasn't like, oh no, zombies. It was just like, these old guys.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, right? Because all these other games that we're sort of like loosely comparing to, you have the same feeling, but for a different reason.
Sure.
In Doom or Quake or whatever, you have that same feeling because you're so sick by then that literally the base type of enemy is a complete fucking joke that you just kick and flick away with your fingers and they disintegrate. But in this game, you're never really getting to that level of like strength or power, but they're comfortable almost because I'm like, you've already killed me in every way that you can kill.
I know you.
I know all your moves, and I ain't afraid to die.
Yes.
I saved my game. my inventory is cooking. I have herbs. What are you gonna do? Take a bite?
I could take a bite. We could all take a
Take
bite.
a bite. I'm hungry. Yeah, take a bite, brother.
Chomp chomp Jill sandwich. Yeah, so it's like we're not, but that's like that almost sounds like power fantasy.
Yeah,
but it's not.
It's
like
different.
It's like a deeper thing.
It's just knowing your
way.
limits in a way.
Yeah.
It's like understanding. You're in touch with the characters so much that you're understanding that actually this isn't that threatening, and I can get through this because I've also done that 1,000 times by now.
Yeah.
I've gotten by one zombie in my sleep by now, but I had to like suffer to get to here.
Yeah, totally. You've learned, and like once you know forever. You know forever. Way.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's what you've internalized. It's the idea that like what's truly scary in this game, what's truly scary but also exciting in this game is the new. It's like encountering a new type of enemy. Like encountering a new room is just this thrilling like, ooh, what am I going to find in here? Yeah. I've got this key. Ooh, this key. Like there's these like little moments of just like, ooh.
Yeah.
And you look at paintings and there's like some like descriptive text, this or that, but it's like the new. And like when you encounter a new enemy, it's so scary because you just have no information. You're like, I don't know what the behavior of this is. I don't know what to do.
I don't actually know that you're not threatening. You might be the most threatening. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's, and some of the more intimidating enemies are ironically enough, like, what is it? The big spiders? Like they replaced the dogs with big spiders at a certain point, and it's not even. It's just like what
that boss, the really really big spider boss. Like I don't know.
It's relatively straightforward,
very easy and not scary. Yeah, but it was huge. I don't know. Maybe it was gonna kill me in one shot, and then I have to go all the way back to the top of the waterfall or whatever.
It's the moment of not knowing. Yeah. Like as you're about to pass through the veil. Like that's the thing that's scary. And so like it's not that you don't take the zombies seriously. It's that like you know them. You know how seriously to take them. And to that point, those like blackened figures that appear in the boiler room, I didn't spend enough time with them to learn anything about them. It was just like I can't process these things. I'm gonna go. Like it was just, and that sort of I think proves the point.
Like you're demented if you tried to like interact with those at any point. Yeah. Like like better the devil you know, right? Is like the kind of thing. Like I would rather that room is filled with 50 zombies that I've dealt with 100 times before than like one of those things.
This little freak.
Like, fuck, and it like. As you're running under it, it kind of like droops its feet or hands down to like give you a little swipe.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the better the devil you know. Like that's kind of like that's the arc of this game in a way. And like as the game's wrapping up, you're like you fight this big like the bosses. I truly don't really understand the presence of bosses in this game. Like it's. At the outset, I was like, how can there be any bosses? Like, I have to be so careful with my ammunition. How can I have an encounter that demands ammunition? And then when you actually do the boss encounters, it's usually like pretty blunt combat. It's
Hot
just
take,
like
bosses suck. I don't know, man.
I don't think they're the focal point of the game. I think they're paced well.
I don't like bosses in like any games. I don't know.
Just in general.
I don't know, man.
I mean, I like when a boss is like a set of mechanics that you need to learn. Like I like when a boss is like a game unto itself.
That's interesting.
But I think like bosses can sometimes be like too simple in a way that's just like
people will know the Bloodborne episode maybe, but
what happened?
Just the bosses were so hyped up to me, like, oh, dude, like this boss is. And everyone, it's like so corny. It's like, oh, this like little set piece arena with this like cut scene of this big beast. I'm just like, yeah, great. Another boss. Like, I'd rather be playing the game than like, I don't know.
Well, I think it ties back to Resident Evil in a way, because I think like what we're landing on is that Resident Evil is a game that is like consistently presenting like new and confusing scenarios,
Yeah.
like whether they're action, whether they're puzzle, like whether they're this or that. It's like you're almost always playing the game.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's the game is the game.
It is cool how the cutscenes sort of with the black bars of the movie basically just fade away into immediate gameplay. Like that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, the snake is on me, and then you just start fighting the snake.
Yeah.
That's the game, baby. I mean, I have so many more notes. I can tell by your darting eyes. You're looking through your notes live on air, but
I found the thing that I was stoked about.
say the thing and wrap us up. Bring us home.
The game is not scary because there are zombies. The game is scary because there are zombies that you possibly cannot deal with, that you will be killed and your game will end. Whether that's deep in your loins or not, it's a state of tension. But I think that idea does resonate with what we're talking about. It's not about the presence of zombies. It's about like, how much do I know about this situation?
Yeah.
Like what do I need to have from the inventory box? Like, what do I have?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me, Mikami-san? Like, and I'm invoking Mikami-san because he himself also says, I remember thinking if the enemies were only scary because of the possibility of game over, it wouldn't be sufficient for me to reach my goal with Biohazard. There had to be more to it than that. It's a game then that like it renders its fear through time and space and pacing and like the information that the player has learned and when they've learned it and how they've learned it. The thought I had playing the game was like, it's not about the zombies, it's about the not knowing. And you read a quote from Mikami and he's like, it's not about the zombies. It's there needs to be more.
I think that's spot on. It is sort of everything that we've been talking about, right? The not knowing is the camera angles. The not knowing is the weird tank controls. The not knowing is I can't just save unlimited amount of times. I have these consumable saves. Is it worth using one now? Or am I about to get fucking railed by a shark that I didn't even know was in the game, you know? And I should have saved, you know, like in Castlevania and Symphony of the Night, I kept fighting with this because you can save unlimited times in that game.
Sure.
So you always should. Because you could just die at any point and lose all your progress. So you should just always go back and save. And I hated that. I hated being like the feeling of being like, oh, I'm having fun. I'm progressing. I'm playing the game. I have to go back and save. But in this game,
it would be prudent for me to go back and save.
But in this game, it's like you maybe don't have to. Actually, even more than that, you maybe shouldn't save. Saving might be actually bad here because like you're wasting an ink ribbon.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden the weighting of that is all different. It's like I've made some progress. I think I can make a little more progress here before I hit that save, you know, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, it's the John notion of like no safety saves.
No
like
safety
I'd rather
saves.
just start over.
I'd rather fucking die than waste an ink ribbon.
And it manifests in the game like in such small way. Like if you get bit 3 times, it's just like, man, I'm gonna have to use an herb for that. Like I'm just gonna try again. Like I'm just gonna try again.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely game. Everybody should play whatever, you know, as much as we're talking about.
I just don't even know anything about the other versions, but I found it comical videos where I see the GameCube remake and they're like, oh, the graphics are so fucking sick. I'm just like, all right, yeah, calm down.
The graphics are sick in the GameCube version. The graphics are sick in the PlayStation version.
Exactly my point. Like they're literally completely different. It's like looking at like 2 paintings from like hundreds of years apart and being like, that one's fucking sick. That one should be done in this way. That one should be more in this style, more modernized, so it like looks cooler. It's like those are completely different things. Like, why are you even comparing them?
Totally. How do we wrap this up?
There's a lot more, but we gotta call it. Thank you. And then And then play Jill playing Moonlight Sonata, Take Us Home.
Oh, so Jill knows how to play Moonlight Sonata?
Now you have to learn it. You get the sheet music.
Oh my God. In the Chris playthrough, it just tells you Chris doesn't know how to play sheet music. And then Rebecca has to play it. And then you end up in a sequence where you get to the room where you first encountered a zombie and you can hear Rebecca playing Moonlight Sonata in the distance. And it's like, oh man.
I love it. I love it.
It is a beautiful game.
Yeah, I mean, my notes are just all caps. Okay, Jill's just playing Moonlight Sonata now.
Hell yeah. Okay. I think that's a good note to end on. Just like
the thing it says in capital letters on the booklet is "You're dead, scared, face your fear." But I think it's supposed to read "You're dead, scared, face your fear," but it's just like fucking formatted weird.
You're dead, you're scared,
face your fear. But honestly, that is what it's all about. I think that's kind of like where we're coming down on this is like you know, those skateboarding kids are going to be all right. Like, you got to just toughen up. Yeah, you might die. Yeah, you might have to go back to your last save. But now you're locked in and you know the optimal routing. Go for it again. Like, all good. That's what you learn in this game. I ain't afraid to die.
And the game accommodates that. The game sets itself up such that like it wants you to play through it multiple times. It wants you to
it does totally
make different choices, see different endings, play as different characters. You didn't even tell me about Barry.
I didn't tell you about Barry. I didn't even get the good ending because I didn't save Chris because I didn't have a third Mo disc.
Exactly.
There's so much more that we could talk about, but I'm really happy that we talked about the things we did talk about and didn't just say like, and then I pushed the box over the poison hole so I died. Oh, fucking annoying ass game. They would never do this in a remake. It's like, I ain't interested in that.
I think Resident Evil is a game that taps the ineffable. It taps into like deeper things. Like we did not even touch upon like the legacy of this
plot,
game.
The legacy. We didn't even do our jobs, arguably.
Look, you want me to read another quote? Here's a quote from Mikami from 1996.
Hit me.
We hope that people really enjoy Resident Evil. If the first game does well and there is much demand, we'll consider doing a sequel. Smash cut to Mikami in 2016. I can't help thinking that if Resident Evil hadn't sold so well, maybe I could have spent that period of my 30s doing creative work as a studio director instead of working as a producer. Although I still feel like a very lucky man to be able to have those kinds of worries.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, how many Resident Evil games are there? Actual question.
400,000.
Yeah, like more than arguably any other series other than like Mario, maybe. Like I don't know.
I get a sense that Resident Evil is like the backbone of Capcom as a company.
Right.
This could probably be quantified in some way or another, but Resident Evil has been like a reliable.
There's around 60 games when you include remakes, spin-offs, mobile, and pachinko games.
Ooh, pachinko.
And Suika likes where you just drop zombie heads create the hanging monkey power room guys at the end.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
New cool pachinko.
Yeah. Can we go?
So we can go next week.
We got a dev talk.
That's right. With we're going to be talking to Francisco Gonzalez from Grundislav Games about his upcoming game Rosewater. So stay tuned for that in the Wide Flank feed. Come on down to the Discord to talk about what you need from Resident Evil and other games. And truly, I'm getting this game. It goes on and on and on. This game is just endless.
I have so many more notes, and we're not going to talk about any of them because we're out of here.
We're done.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.